Hey guys, it's Mike. I wanted to do a video expanding on the Spider-Man No Way Home movie. Um, I took a lot longer than I wanted to make this video, so it is quite late. But I was trying to think about how I wanted to do these videos and kind of come up with a format. So I wanted to break down the movie a little bit. Um, Hopefully, you're a Spider-Man fan. Hopefully, you've seen it. Of course, if you're not, that's totally cool. But Spider-Man's one of my favorite characters since I got into comics. I think I started to get into comics when I was 13, and I got a calendar from my dad, and the calendar had 12 months and a different Marvel hero for each month. And my dad is not like a comic book guy at all. I think he got the calendar because it was maybe half price or something. But that calendar actually had a really big impact on my interests. So I I took a while to kind of warm up to the characters, but the variety of characters that were featured in the calendar kind of like took me by surprise. And there's so many different kinds of characters in Marvel comics. So um, basically, if there's one type of character that you like, you're probably going to be able to find a character similar to that in Marvel, and you can follow that. I have a friend that loves the Punisher, so if you like a very grounded sort of anti-hero, there's that. If you want something fantastical with magic and all of this, you can go with Doctor Strange. Um, there's so much variety that it's kind of got a little bit of something for everybody. So that's the cool thing about comics, and especially Marvel comics, in my opinion. I I like DC comics too, but DC comics, they are older than Marvel by a long ways, and in many situations Marvel was copying them. So uh, if you look through the characters that Marvel has introduced over the years, and you see how many of them were kind of aping something that DC did, it's kind of sad, but it does happen the other way too. Sometimes Marvel makes a good character and DC will copy that idea and put their own spin on it. But basically, I like Marvel because I feel the characters have more depth, and I think that was a situation that happened at Marvel following Fantastic Four's introduction back in 1961, or I think that should be right. I think 61. And then the popularity of those characters led to other characters being created, and in 1962 and 1963 especially, so many Marvel characters came out that were destined to last a long time. Spider-Man is kind of the flagship character, if you don't know already. But if you've seen the movie, you probably already know this. But anyway, I wanted to talk about the movie in general. So the movie has Willem Dafoe. I love Willem Dafoe. I liked him so much as the Norman Osborn in the old Tobey Maguire movie. I'm like a lot of people, I don't care about the costume. The costume was really goofy, and geez, I don't know, 12 to 15 years later, when we could see the kind of Goblin Mask trial version, I was like, oh, I wish they would have went with that one. That would have been so cool. But anyway, Willem Dafoe is a great actor. Willem Dafoe puts a lot of energy into everything he does, and I think he was a really good choice or an inspired choice for the first movie. So while his costume design leaves a lot to be uh, a lot there's just so much missing from the comics when it comes to his costume, so a lot to be desired, but um, his performance and his kind of duality as Norman and as the Goblin, that really sells the part in my opinion, and I love the character because of that. So um, the movie's story and the movie's ending, I think this is spoilers discussion, so um, the movie's story has some weak points, like Ned learning magic suddenly. It's pretty silly, but I think they probably wanted to develop those characters a bit more or give those characters a chance to shine. I don't know. There's enough other things that work really well that I'm okay with that part. But so I would say the story is good or fair, but the the execution is what really sells the movie. Like they do a really good job with what they decided to do, and there are plenty of moving parts, like actually not like complicated moving parts like a clock, but there are many parts that actually have a lot of emotion. So that's something that these newer Spider-Man movies didn't do very much, other than like kind of goofiness and silliness. So I like that they tried to give it a lot more heart this time. And as for the ending, I loved that the Goblin is kind of the villain for Spider-Man because of this movie. A lot of people like the Vulture, as in the what's it called? Michael Keaton's Vulture in Spider-Man: Homecoming. So I think he was a fantastic villain. I thought he did an amazing job, and I liked his portrayal of that character. Though it is a lot different from the comics, I thought it was a really nice version of the character. But Spider-Man: Homecoming does have the same problem that these new Marvel movies have. That is, Iron Man is the focus of everything. So they got to get away from Iron Man, and finally they kind of got away from Iron Man in this movie, and I think the movie is all the better for it. So please don't get me wrong. I love Iron Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man are my two favorite Marvel characters. Yeah, probably Spider-Man because his heart and his character, and next to Iron Man because of his technology. The engineering technology side is very cool. I don't know who is my third favorite. I suppose Vision, maybe, or War Machine, maybe. But there's a lot of cool characters, but I'll sometime do a top 10 characters for Marvel. But the characters, speaking of characters, the characters in the movie, I think most of the characters were likable. I think a lot of people could enjoy seeing Doc Ock again, and I think the movie did a good job to contrast Doc Ock's villainy with Green Goblin's villainy, as well as the other villains too. Some of the characters were kind of underdeveloped, like we didn't see enough of them, but I think it worked pretty well because you don't want to develop like all 5 of the enemies, 6 if you count J. Jonah Jameson. But for the story's sake and the story's development, you shouldn't put that much into every single villain. But I think they did a great job with Doc Ock and with Green Goblin. I love Sandman, so I think they did a fair job with Sandman. Some of the people I've seen online criticize like well, why did Sandman do this and why did Sandman do that? And I think Sandman, being a big Sandman fan from the comics as well, I think Sandman is pretty wishy-washy. he does tend to change his opinion. I've read all the Silver Sable comics, Silver Sable and the Wild Pack, and actually I read those last year, so it's kind of good timing for this movie. But Sandman in that kind of takes a turn, or a heel turn, like he becomes a bit of a villain, or he betrays Silver Sable. So as far as Sandman's character, I think Sandman would do a pretty selfish way. He did kind of have some redemption at the end of Spider-Man 3 back in the day, but I don't think that means he's just going to be, the perfect hero type guy. He's still, of questionable ethical choices, so I think he will do what he thinks he needs to. So, okay, and I thought that the characters in this movie had much more of a journey than in the other movies. We feel like Spider-Man has actually changed or gone through something. We feel like, we kind of feel like MJ has even changed or gone through something. I think they did a great job to develop her character more. And a lot of people said online she's not just like, a meme or, a joke. She's always joking, but in this movie they give her a little bit more of an emotional side to do. And I think the actress did a really good job. I'm not like a huge fan of the actress, but I think she did a really good job, so she impressed me in this movie, so it's quite a nice surprise. So, and let's talk the performances. So, lead performance, Tom Holland did excellent job. I think he went above and beyond what he needed to do for this movie. I think those close-ups when Aunt May died, that was really good. That was showcasing his acting ability perfectly. And I think Aunt May, Marissa Tomei, did a lot better job in this movie. She was given a lot more to work with. So, as many other people have said, I wish that she could have been explored more as a character in earlier movies instead of it always being like a joking thing. I don't mind that they had her younger, but I am kind of an old school Spider-Man fan, so I would like older Aunt May. I thought it was kind of a gimmick thing, and it played as a gimmick thing far too long. So thank God in this movie they changed it a bit. Supporting characters, I think everybody did pretty much a good job. I think the villains did a very good job. I don't know if the lizard actor was actually back or not. I know he had kind of a scandal back in the day at Comic-Con, and that led me to believe that Sony would probably not be affiliated with him again. But I suppose, money money has a special power. If you think that you can gain from bringing back that character, they may make a deal with him. Like they may want it to be an all-out effort with all of the old villains. So, okay, and sorry, I'm having problems with my camera again. It looks like maybe my camera is trying to turn off whenever it loses the internet connection, and since my Wi-Fi network is really unstable and keeps switching between two Wi-Fi, what is it called, channels, or two Wi-Fi versions, and I think it's turning off the camera. But I wanted to continue with supporting characters. So of course, spoilers. The movie has Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to reprise their roles, and both of them do it really well. They both do it in a very nuanced way that makes each of their characters relatable in unique ways. Tobey Maguire does a great job as the kind of the relaxed, older, less cool, more confident with himself, that kind of at peace Spider-Man, and it's revealed that he's married to MJ and he's made things work. So it's a happy ending for him. And then Andrew Garfield, who I liked as Spider-Man, but I did think he was poorly written. It wasn't the actor's performance, but they made his Peter Parker too cool. It's supposed to be like the Ultimate Comics version, so they didn't have much choice for that. But they wrote him as too cool to the point where he was kind of unlikable in some ways, and they also made his Spider-Man a complete jerk in the first movie. That was probably because he was supposed to be going through the stress of Uncle Ben dying on him. So, but they do a good job to redeem him. It would be cool to see what they would have done with him if they would have done a good job with Spider-Man 2, but Sony, as before, tried to force the directors to add tons of characters, and they really underwrote themselves on that movie. So, but with this movie, they've redeemed Andrew Garfield. He really shines, and basically his character's climax also happens in this movie. So he was unable to save Gwen Stacy, but in this movie he's able to save Mary Jane when Tom Holland can't save her. So that's an awesome thing. Really quick also on the lead character and supporting character, Alfred Molina's performance is very well done. He also has the nuanced performance. He does a great job playing the villain again, but he also does a great job showing his humanity and that he's actually a good person at heart after he gets the tentacles controlled, so they're not kind of controlling his own brain. And Tom Holland and Willem Dafoe have an awesome fight inside of the Happy Hogan's apartment complex. That's the best fight scene I think I've seen for a long time for the Spider-Man movies. Certainly for me, by far the best in the MCU. I love the Captain America Civil War fight scene at the airport, but for these actual Spider-Man movies, the Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man No Way Home, this is the best fight sequence, and it's vicious, and Willem Dafoe kills it with his performance. He just does an awesome job making this character like frightening, and Tom Holland does an awesome job trying to deal with. He's got this arch nemesis that he never even realized he had before. So I think Tom Holland does a good job kind of like, well, what is going on? Who is this guy? And this guy is completely overpowering me. So both of their performances are great there. So I'm going to try to edit this. I hope it will work. I'm not positive, but my phone's disappointing me today. So I'm going to check again if this is recording. I think that's basically it. As far as character actors in this movie, I don't really know that many character actors for this generation. So I would say that the teachers in the movie are kind of like character actors. They pop up and do a silly thing or a noticeable thing, so they're memorable. But I don't know very many character actors that were in this movie. So, okay, let's go on to production. For the production, I thought The movie was generally well done. I did tend to think that the special effects weren't up to par with what some of the movies in the past have been, especially for Spider-Man movies. Um, as far as the old movies effects that stood out in a bad way, I would say the Rhino in Amazing Spider-Man 2 was awful. His head was kind of just floating around inside that costume. So, but as far as special effects, when Tom Holland Spider-Man climbed outside during the fight with the Green Goblin, it kind of took me out of the movie when the helicopter's spotlighting him and he's climbing up the side. Something about the lighting just doesn't look right, but I think that they probably rushed a bit on some of the special effects. Um, People have talked about in the past, like Black Panther and Black Widow too. Some of the movies, especially more recent movies, some of the effects have been lacking, and I think that's true. I think it's an over reliance on computer effects. I really wish they would balance the special effects with practical effects and computer effects. I like computer effects if they're used like as they need to be, but overusing them or relying on them too much is always going to be noticeable. So okay, and the costume design. I think the costume design was pretty well done. I wasn't as impressed with Electro as I thought I might be when I saw the trailer, and I wasn't as impressed with Green Goblin's outfit as I was hoping. I do think they did a lot better service to him, and they couldn't go too far because they needed to be similar to the previous movie. So I overall like what they did with it, but I was still hoping for a mask of some kind. I think the first movie had the perfect setup with Green Goblin's, no, not Green Goblin's, Norman Osborn's masks all throughout his condominium or mansion, but they never did choose a mask like that. So, but I suppose it was a hard call. So, give him a little bit of give a little bit of leeway when it comes to that. So, okay. The direction of the movie, the shot composition, I thought it was okay. I thought it was serviceable. Some of the Spider-Man stuff, they could have shot it in a way that made it stand out more or to be more visible. So at times I felt like during the fight scenes some of the shot composition was a bit lacking, but overall it was a fair job. So the actors performances, as I said before, I think everyone did a very good job. I don't know how much it was the actors, how much it was the director, but at least the director wasn't doing the wrong thing, I think, in getting the performances out of the actors. The tone, it was a bit shifty, but I don't think it was in a bad way. So it had ups and downs with the tone. There was never something where it was completely shocking. So I think overall they did well with the tone. I think it's a tricky movie because changing pace with Doctor Strange and then Spider-Man and then high school and then the media, J. Jonah Jameson and love story, it's got a lot of things, a lot of notes to play, I should say, a lot of notes to hit, but I think they did a pretty good job with the tone. So, and the pace of the movie was very good. I think that was one of the strong points, and I think if that had been different, I don't think that people would have responded to this movie in this positive of way. So I don't know where the movie's at, but I think it just crossed the third highest grossing movie, if I remember right. But okay, and let's move on. The message, or the director's message. Um, so I like to think of movies. I like to think of what the director is actually trying to say with the movie. Um, I think this is important part of film, important part of considering film as an art. For the Marvel movies, sometimes they have a message. I felt like Captain America: The Winter thought-provoking story. I thought the directors wanted to question where the United States is, where surveillance is, where our individual rights are as Americans. I think there was a lot they were trying to say with that movie. With this movie, I think it's less about the director's message and more about getting Peter Parker to be Peter Parker. So they did bring Peter Parker back to basics. It's in a kind of goofy way with having everybody forget who he is. However, it does have a strong emotional impact on the audience, and it is a powerful device in which to make Spider-Man Spider-Man again. He doesn't have the fancy suit. He has to rely on himself. I think they could have gone about it in a better way, probably, but I think this is a fair way to do it. So, especially considering they've already had 2 movies before this. So, okay, and what did I take from this movie? Basically, I took that Sony wants to make more Spider-Man movies, and they wanted to go all out with this one, and I'm hoping, really hoping that Sony does a decent job with some of the Spider-Man movies if they do make their Spider-Verse. I saw Venom a few years ago. I'm a Venom fan. The Venom movie was just terrible for me. I really couldn't stand that Venom movie. I wish that the movie had something more similar to the comics. So I'm just a hardcore comics guy, so I really want them to be loyal to the comics. I think if Marvel has control of Venom, they can do him more justice. But even the voice of Venom that they chose, it just takes me out of the movie. That I really wish that it wasn't included at the end of this movie. That part stands out so much. Eddie, we are drunk. This part is so stupid. I don't know why they added that, but I'm sure Sony insisted on it. So I know Sony has done some really high highs with Spider-Man, but they've also done some really low lows with Spider-Man. So this movie, it's hard to choose, but I would say, similar to my partner's opinion, she said it's one of her top 3 Spider-Man movies. So she does like Spider-Man 1 best, I think. And I probably would say I like Spider-Man 2 best overall. And Spider-Man 1 is the original, so that's great. But and then I would probably like this movie. So Spider-Man 3 has a lot of good stuff for me, but they didn't do a Venom justice, and I hate that Sony bullied Sam Raimi on that. I think Sam Raimi had a powerful vision for what the story would be, and they screwed it up. So, but anyway, okay, and the last thing I would say, recommendations or comparisons. Recommendations. I don't have very many things to say about this movie as far as recommendations go. I guess if you haven't seen the MCU movies and you did see the Spider-Man movies and you like this one, then I think you would enjoy seeing more of the MCU movies. As far as like a comparison, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I was getting into comics in the 90s. I would say you can compare this in some ways to Spider-Man 90s animated series. If you haven't seen the Spider-Man 90s animated series, strongly recommend it. It does the character justice. It had a pretty poor ending, but the ending is also something you can easily ignore. You can watch up close to the last episode, and you don't need to watch the last episode. The last episode was meant to segue into a new series that was going to come after it, and it's kind of better if you just don't see the end of that series. But Spider-Man the animated series did justice to the comics. They developed a lot of the characters. They're responsible for so many things that are important to me, and so many memories of my teenage years. So I would say recommendations, if you do like classic Peter Parker, check out The Untold Tales of Spider-Man. That is an excellent series. I'm probably going to do a video about that series because that's probably my favorite comic book series ever. But if we wanted to compare it to something, compare this movie, I suppose, as far as like DC goes, I wouldn't really compare this to anything that they've done because I think this is just so far beyond what they've done as far as movies go. There are a lot of DC shows that I think are done very well, but as far as the movies, they've been out of it for a long time as far as I can tell. So but anyway, I'll wrap this up. I don't want it to be too long, but I did want to get something done. So not going to have something like this to show for every movie I talk about, but Spider-Man No Way Home, we got these two things. I went to the theater a couple of times, so this one is a little calendar, and this one is just a little card. So like my friend said, she's not sure what she's going to do with this, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it either, but it's pretty cool looking artwork. So, all right. Okay. Thank you for joining me for this movie talk, and I look forward to talking about another movie in the near future with you. Ghostbusters is finally going to come to Japan at the beginning of next month, so I hope to talk to you shortly after seeing that. I know people in America have seen it a long time ago, and some of it's been spoiled for me already, but I still want to see it in the theater, actually. So I got fingers crossed about how I'm going to feel about it, but I'm not sure. I think I'm in the crowd. Ghostbusters 3 was Ghostbusters the video game, because that game was done so well. But okay, thank you again for joining me. Bye.